What's going on, people? Welcome back to another Get It Bucket podcast with me, your host, Chris LeBron. As always, I'm joined by my guy, Kev. Kev, what's going on, brother?
Man, a little sleepy, but hey, we here. It's conference tournament time. Selection
Hella
Sunday
sleepy.
is this Sunday. I can't wait. We in the
Crazy,
thick of
right?
things. I can't wait, to get it started. Glad to be back. How about yourself, though? I'm good.
I'm doing good, bro. I'm tired just like you, but we got a lot to get into. Obviously, like you said, Selection Sunday is this week, which I had to think for a second, like, wow, it is this week, and it's only what a few days away. Actually,
Hmm.
we got a lot of tournament, conference tournament guys trying to try to get into the tournament, the automatic bids, teams fighting, last four in, a lot of that stuff going on. Teams trying to see who's going to be the number one seeds, fighting for number one position. So a lot of stuff going on, and we'll get into who we think our number one seeds are. We'll get into some recruiting stuff, but let's start it off with a firing that we it feels like it was destined to happen 4 games into the season, like last year and all that. And obviously, that's Kenny Payne. We all knew this was inevitable, and it happened. He was let go from Louisville after a loss, and it's been a tough go around for Kenny and all that. 12-52 as the coach of the Louisville Cardinals. 8-24 this year. 3-17 in conference play. They got bounced in the first round of the ACC tournament. So tough, tough run for KP. Like I said, we talked about it, and whether it was unfair and all that, it kind of felt like it was they weren't behind him and all that, and it just felt like it was just destined to happen and all that. It was just a matter of when, and it felt like he had some kind of momentum, got a solid recruiting class coming in. It's like, all right, it's hard to be, it was a really bad year one, but it's like, all right, let's give him a shot. They're like, nah. They're like, nah, we're not with it and all that. So they let him go and all that. So KP fired. How do you feel about this? Do you feel it was warranted? Do you feel like it was unjust? Like, talk to me about KP before we get into potential, replacements.
Man, so I agree with you in the sense that it felt like it was doomed to fail from the jump, right? Like it just, and I was rooting for KP when they hired him. I was rooting for him, but at the same time, when you really peel back the layers, it was his first time being a head coach at the Division One level, and he's at Louisville, which we all know is a major program in the sport. On top of he's an alumni that won a national championship there under Denny Crum, so the pressure was already mounting. On top of he's a black man in Louisville, right? There's that aspect too. So it was a lot going into it. I'm not even going to use that race card thing, but like that's just the facts of the matter, right? And so like you said, 12 wins in 2 seasons, that's not going to cut it, right? That's not going to cut it anywhere, let alone Louisville. So
Mm,
it is what it is. It's unfortunate. Hopefully this next hire is going to be crucial. I know we'll talk about, like you said, potential candidates in a second, but KP, man, he could just never get it going, right? He had it felt like he had some momentum going into this year, right? Obviously, the only way you could go from 4 games is up, literally, right? But he just didn't really capitalize on it. I feel like he didn't have the best talent, right? Like you had good names on paper, but it never felt like it ever was fully in sync. And you see in that game yesterday versus NC State, they were in that game for majority of the game. Sky Clark had 30. Like they were right there. And I think he has 7 threes. And the team just had some costly turnovers, some costly defensive mishaps. And they were just having mental lapses that you can't afford to have in games like that. And for Louisville fans, they've been starving to get back to competitive basketball ever since Chris Mack left, really when Rick Pitino left. And that's what they're shooting for again. So for KP, he'll be fine. He'll find himself somewhere on some bench, regardless of level. He'll be somewhere fine. But they just, if you're Josh Hurd, the athletic director at Louisville, you had to go in this direction. It's time to get somebody that you can build with for the next decade plus, and we'll see who that's going to be.
yeah, like I said, it just talent wasn't there, and it just feels like Louisville. The effects of the Patino stuff is still kind of hovering around them, so it's gonna take a little bit for them to get that stench out. But if they can potentially get the right coach, and we'll talk about it, and obviously now speculation comes on who will be the next head coach of Louisville. I still think it is a really good job. I think it's still a
Agreed.
premier job. I think potentially be a top 15, 20 job. Like like I said, right coach, you can get them back, in the same grace as Kentucky, right? Your in-state rivals and all that. So some potential names that have been hovering around, and there's some big names, obviously, like Scott Drew from Baylor. There's Dusty May. There's Nick Cronin, Nate Oach, Jerome Tang, and all that. So, with Scott Drew, that's the big name right there. It's tough to leave Baylor. He just got one of the top recruits in the country to commit. VJ
Exactly.
Edgecombe out of Long Island. So that would be tough. Dusty May is one where it's like, he has some of the pedigree. Just went to a Final Four. Low buyout, which is the big thing in this, is the buyouts, because you go to Mick Cronin and his buyout is 20 mil, and it drops to 16 in April. But you got to wait a little bit, to hire him, if that's the case. And then like Nate Oates has a $10 million buyout. Jerome Tang is an interesting, because it's only 6 mil, and we've known there's some things going on in K-State that's that can probably set him back a little bit. But to me, he's a great coach, and that would be a name that I would feel like, I don't know, he feels like he could fit Louisville, and he understands, and he'll know how to recruit and get them going. So there's some names there. Are there any other names that you're thinking about that could potentially be candidate, or are there any of these candidates you think are the right fit to be the next coach at Louisville?
I think Dusty May is the logical one, and I know because he's an Indiana alum, that would sting to Indiana fans, right?
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, I think Will Wade is the way to go, right? Literally,
Yeah.
he literally today just stamped and punched McNeese State's ticket to the NCAA tournament.
Hell of
They
a
won.
season.
They won the Southland. They've won a whole bunch of games. I think they only won 11 games the season prior before he got there this year. To me, they call him the American gangster because he just knows how to win wherever he goes. I know he had the things at LSU, but he got the show calls, but it wasn't like he did something crazy. All he did was offer Javonte Smart a bag on the phone. He got caught up for it. And now look at the game that we're in now. NIL is legal, right?
Isn't it crazy, right?
He just got caught up doing what everybody else is doing, right? So I think Will Wade is the perfect way to go. I don't think you can go wrong with Dusty May either. I just think you go with Will Wade. Will Wade, is going to bring in premier talent that Louisville is used to having, right? You go back when he was at LSU, he had Nas Reed, he had Cam Thomas, he had a whole bunch of guys, Javonte Smart, Tremont Waters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Trendon Watford, right? He had dogs. And so I think he fits Louisville to a T. Dusty May, again, not as high profile, right? Obviously, he hasn't coached at a job like this before as the head coach, which I think makes it kind of tough because if you're Louisville, you got to get a home run higher. You have to.
Yeah, you
Like
got to hit on this one.
you have to. If you're the AD, all the pressure, Josh Hurd, all the pressure in the world is on you right now because the football program is good, right? Jeff Braun from Purdue, he's originally from Louisville, but he was at Purdue. He's going to be fine there. They've had success already. But we all know Louisville's a basketball school first and foremost. And so based off your past few hires between Patino, you've had a few, you've had some interim coaches, you had, Chris Mack. You got to hit. You just have to hit. And you got to get a dude that I firmly believe can be there for, as I mentioned, like a decade plus, and you can totally build from the ground up. And that's the thing, too, that people don't really talk about. It's not the rebuilding job that Ed Cooley is going to have to do at Georgetown, but you are rebuilding at Louisville. And I feel like people didn't give that grace to KP just because KP was an alum and a player. But Louisville, it's a lot there, right? It's just because it's a top tier program doesn't mean that it doesn't need like some fixing, right? You got to update with the times. You got to be able to develop players. You got to get your right players in. You got to put in a culture, establish your foundation. And so to me, I think they really can't go wrong between Dusty May and Will Wade. But me personally, I would go Will Wade. And I'll say with Scott Drew, I just don't see Scott Drew leaving Baylor. Like, as you mentioned,
I
getting
don't
VJ
think so.
Edgecombe, he's not old, but he's up in age, right? And I just feel like he's in the perfect situation. I know I've heard their NIL isn't the greatest, but he's made it work, right? And I think with the success that he's had, he can start to get more NIL, especially because Baylor's a private school, right? So to me, it's no world where I can just see Scott Drew leaving because again, you have your foundation built at Baylor, right? You've had a whole bunch of good coaches. You had Jerome Tang on your sideline, right? You had Graham McCaskins at Texas Tech having a great year. on your sideline. You've had NBA players, Davion Mitchell to name one, and you have multiple Torian Prince, right? So I feel like that's kind of a pipe dream. If it happens, then call me wrong, whatever. But I don't really see Scott Drew leaving Baylor to go to Louisville, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't see it happening. Like I said, Will Wade would be, and I didn't even think about it for a second, but yeah, he's done a great job at McNeese State. Uh, winning their conference tournament, getting an automatic bid to get in. So that would be great. Like I said, I do like Jerome Tang. I don't know. I just feel like he would be a good fit and all that. Dusty May, obviously, like I said, the low buyout helps a lot. So, I think those three candidates, I think the most logical ones, like I said, Scott Drew would be, that'll be a grand slam if they're able to pull that off. But like I said, he's got it made. They just won a chip a few years back. Like I said, he like I said, even with the limited NIL, like you said, I mean, they're still pulling off some top flight recruits and good ones too that go on become NBA players. And like I said, you got VJ coming in next year. So but yeah, it's it's Louisville, bro. Kev, is Louisville. Like,
Yeah.
even if you get a second tier coach, this is still Louisville. You should be able to make it work. It shouldn't be this like it shouldn't be this hard, But yeah, I don't know. It seems like it's just crazy. It is crazy, but it feels like they finally like, all right, we tried. That clearly didn't work. We gotta swing for the fences, and we gotta get a guy to make this respectable again, because Louisville being down, and especially down this bad, like we've had schools have down, UNC's had some down years, but it's still like our NIT bound. Like there's no tournaments for 4-win seasons. You don't make any tournament winning 4 games. So hopefully they figure it out, because when Louisville's good, it's just better for college basketball and all that. And we got to get Louisville back on top. But we'll see. They got an opportunity to find their next guy, and there's some good candidates. There's some really good candidates. So they can't mess up. I mean, you can mess it up,
but you can't.
But you can't though. Like at the same time, So I think one of those guys we mentioned will end up being the head coach. So we'll see what happens. So, but in some more sadder news and all that, the Pac-12 by this weekend will officially be over. And it's crazy to think that it's going to be done and all that. So, what are some of your memories of the Pac-12? And I know they haven't had a national champion since I think '97 and all that. So it's but they still have had some really good teams that have been able to make runs and all that. Those late '90s Arizona teams with Gill and all of them, or Richard Jefferson. Even some of those mid 2000s with like Shannon Fry and all that, Salim Stoudemire. The UCLA teams. There's even the recent UCLA teams that went to the Final Four, which you got Miami in Miami. So they've had some good. The Stanford teams, like I remember Stanford went undefeated. Like they've had some memorable teams and all that, regardless if they didn't win a national championship since the '97. But Pac-12's done, man. So what are some of your lasting memories of the Pac-12?
Man, I'd say first and foremost, rest in peace, Lou Olson, right, for what he did at Arizona, most definitely. As you mentioned, the players he produced, and of course, he won that national championship in '97. Mike Bibby, those guys, right? Miles Simon, all them dogs down there in Tucson. I'd say number one for me personally was that Isaiah Thomas game winner 2011 at UW, or for UW, shall I say, at the Pac-12 tournament where he game winner Arizona. And Gus Johnson was on the call, hit him with that mid-range jumper for the game. That's like a legendary call to me. And there's so many, bro. Like, man, it's really crazy to think about. I was thinking about that this past weekend. Like, one of my homies, shout out to my homie Vincent, he a USC fan. He pretty much just said, like, the Galen Center just went from a Pac-12 home venue to a Big Ten home venue, just like that. And I was like, that's so crazy to think about. And it's a lot, though. Like, even that 1 year Lonzo had at UCLA, that was magical, bro.
Yeah.
The game winner he had versus Oregon at, Pauley Pavilion was crazy, right? You look at that Oregon team, 2016-17, I believe, with Dylan Brooks that went to the Final Four, with Tyler Dorsey and all those guys, right? Like, say what you want to say about the Pac-12, but it's been a lot of cold players that have come through there. You look at their pro talent, like it's guys everywhere. Russ, James Harden, Klay Thompson, right? Like dudes have gone through the Pac-12, right? And so it's bittersweet, especially because it literally could have not got to this. But regardless, I mean, even like Stanley Johnson's year at Arizona, I thought
Yeah.
like he was killing, right? TJ McConnell, shout out to him when he was at Zona, like he was at Duquesne first, and then he switched over to Arizona and played for Sean Miller. I thought he was a dog there. Like there's so many memories, bro. I could literally go on and on and on, but I definitely say that Isaiah Thomas game winner was one. And again, Alonzo game winner versus Oregon is definitely two. It and this list is endless, bro. But RP to the Pac-12. Shout out to the women's side because the women's side this year has been amazing, right? It's teams from top to bottom: USC, Stanford, UCLA, Oregon State. Like it's stupid teams: Utah, Colorado, Arizona. So to me, I don't even know, man. Like it's just I honestly can't even believe it. Like it doesn't even.
It's gonna be weird because like we're just talking about college basketball, but like college football. I mean, USC just running through in the mid 2000s and all that with Reggie and Matt and all that. Like just all the those Oregon teams. And like you said, the women's. I mean, it felt like the Pac-12 was just getting started.
Man,
Juju just started at USC and all that. She about to do big things, and it's like, man, and like I said, it's kind of self-inflicted, with the
mhm,
Pac-12 and how they handled everything and all that. But it's obviously a new era of college sports, not just college basketball. It's a new era. It's college. Like we're gonna see USC in the SEC. Like it's gonna be crazy. It's gonna feel different when you see these different rivalries, new rivalries potentially, and all that. But it is tough because said for me, growing up in early 2000s and all, and seeing Arizona, Lou Olson, and all that, and all these teams of Stanford. Stanford was good, It feels like Stanford has been
mhm,
good in hoop in a
forever.
minute and all that, and so it's definitely a sad day and all that, but it's just and it feel bad for the teams being left out. It was the Oregon State and who's the other team that kind of got left out?
Washington State.
Washington State.
Yep.
Like I don't know what they're gonna do for basketball. I know in football, right? They're independent or they in one of those like the WAC conference or whatever.
I think they left for the Mountain West, I want to
For the
say.
Mountain West.
Mhm.
So they'll probably basketball be the Mountain West and all that. But yeah, it's definitely different times and all that. But the Pac-12, hopefully they go out with a bang and all that. You know, Obviously not been a great year for the Pac-12, but we'll see what happens and all that. But yeah, sad day. Pac-12 coming to an end and all that. So we go from there to some, to a team, a college that used to be, great in Indiana, and they lost one of their big time recruits, and Lee McNeely, was one of the top 15, top 20, some people top 10, in their opinion, all that. He was committed to Indiana. It was between Indiana and Kansas, and he decommitted. And it's been rough for Indiana and all that, And we just talked about the former, NBA, coach, and now we're talking about another coach, and Mike Woodson came from the NBA, and year one wasn't too bad in Indiana, but a year two definitely the opposite. Definitely the opposite, and it hasn't gone his way. And he lost a big time recruit and all that. And I think he's coming back for one more year, but it just could be that just one more year, Coach Woody and all that. So, what does this mean with Liam McNeely decommitting from Indiana? Like,
It's a big time loss just because one, he was your only recruit in the class of 2024. Two, if you put him on this team, he literally almost answers every single one of their problems. Like just like that. He's 6'5", big time shooter. Can put the ball on the floor too. Can defend. He plays for that stacked Mount Verde team down there for Kevin Boyle, right out there in Florida. So to me, he was he was damn near looked at as a savior because again, like Mackenzie Mbako's been better, but he hasn't necessarily lived up to the hype that they put on him, even though that's not his fault necessarily, right? But to me, it's like when you look at this Indiana team this year currently, and they just beat my Spartans too. So salute to them on senior night. They have, after Purdue, you can make a case they have the best front court in the Big Ten between Khalil Ware and Malik Renault and other guys, right? Those two alone can get you 30 to 40 points a night if they wanted to, right? Khalil Ware had 28 on us, and to me, this is big again because that was your only recruit. And this was the dude that people were excited to see. And I thought he would fit Indiana to a T. And I'm gonna be honest, you mentioned what his final two was. It came down to Indiana, Kansas. I'm pretty sure he's gonna end up at Kansas. And you look at Kansas, Kansas needs a dude like that, right? Especially this year too. But to me, it's unfortunate for Woody, but just like last year, he's gonna have to hit that transfer portal, right? They were this close to getting Dalton Connect. They were right there to getting Dalton Connect, and somehow he ended up in Knoxville, and he's done his thing. Shout out to him for winning SEC Player of the Year. But they know how to identify talent. It's the same thing with Izzo. They know how to identify talent, but they got to be able to reel it in and get it, the talent to campus and enrolled as a student athlete, right? So I'm curious to see how they pivot. It's more than likely going to have to be the transporter because when you look at this year's team, your only future, you have Gabe Cupps, you have Mackenzie and Baco, and then after that, like Malik Renault could go to the NBA, he could stay, he could transfer. Khalil Ware, I think, is going to go to the NBA, right? I don't think he had any plans on staying in college for too long. And everybody else is like seniors for the most part. Xavier Johnson, gone. Trey Galloway, gone. Like, you're losing a lot. So losing a guy like Liam McNeely, that was a dude that was supposed to walk in day one and be that dude off the rip. So again, we'll see how they, go about this. But right now, that's a major loss for the Hoosiers because that was a dude you could build with for at least the next 2 years, maybe even 3 or 4. But it's not going to be the case anymore.
Does this end poorly? Is it going to end bad where he's going to get fired midseason, or because I don't know. I don't see it lasting. Because and you talked about it before, like Indiana's fan base, like
Yeah.
it feels, no disrespect to Indiana, but the days of like Indiana being like the basketball town and like the
It's
center of the
long gone.
universe, that's long. Those days
It's
are
long gone.
gone.
RP Bob
Nebraska,
Knight, too,
yeah,
but it's long gone.
yeah, and that was nasty. How he went about his thing, but you know, um, yeah, it doesn't have that same allure. Like it's kind of like Nebraska. I always think Nebraska football, Indiana basketball. They keep trying to find like they have good a rabbit fan, but whether it's good or bad, that's up to you to decide. But they have a passionate fan base that still lives off those glory years, and it's like I don't know if kids today feel the same way like my generation after feels about those programs. So those programs just don't have I don't think they have the same oomph that they used to. Like kids are not dreaming about forget about NIL and all that. There's still kids that like they feel the way about a program like Duke and Carolina, Michigan State. These programs still have that allure where like, yeah, obviously NIL is a thing, but it's like, yeah, I still want to go to this pro because that's Duke. It's Carolina, those things still hold weight. Where Indiana's like, I don't hear a lot of kids when you listen to these you don't really hear, man, Indiana like don't have it, So yeah, I mean, the Mike would work, and it just didn't happen, and that's going to be another job where it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. But losing Liam, that's huge because like I said, they don't got a lot of. They're gonna have to rely on the transfer portal and all that,
Heavy.
and heavy. Like I said,
Mhm.
they're gonna lose a lot of dudes. So I don't know. I just don't. But I just don't think kids think of Indiana the same way that like my people my age or maybe older think about Indiana.
But that's the thing is that, again, you got to adapt with the times, right? And I mentioned they almost had all to connect, right? But they were also right there for Boogie Flan, too, amongst other recruits. And again, it shows me that they're right there, but like again, you can't just be holding on to the allure of what you used to be. That's just like again, RP Bob Knight, but he's not walking through that door, right? All them other dudes is not walking through that door. Dude, when dudes think about Indiana, they're thinking about Oladipo at the max, right? Some dudes probably think about Romeo Langford because Romeo Langford was highly touted, right? And he was good, but again, he wasn't amazing like most people thought he was. And so it's about adjusting with the times and adapting with the times. And I feel the same way about Louisville. Like what people gotta understand is, for instance, look at Kentucky. Yes, we know it's Kentucky, right? But dudes aren't just going to Kentucky just because it's Kentucky. They're going to Kentucky because of Coach Cal's track record, right? Reed Shepard is an anomaly because both his parents went there and he was going to go there regardless of who the coach was. And he's been amazing this year, right? But that entire roster outside of him is all there because of Coach Cal. John Wall set the trend and went to Cal and went and played at Kentucky because of Cal, right? Like that's just what it is. It's not about the university like that. It's about the coach. Duke and Carolina, those are anomalies, right? Because they're blue bloods. But Kentucky's the same thing. But again, look at what Coach Cal has done. 70% of the All-Star game was Kentucky players. That's why dudes go to Kentucky, right? So people got to stop holding on to this program stuff. The program is the program, but the coach is what makes the program. That's how it's always been. That's how it
Mhm.
always will be. It's the same thing for MSU. I want people to understand that, like, yeah, we've been running the Big Ten for a long time, but that doesn't mean anything anymore. This is the present, right? Yeah, we have a good track record. We put some dudes into the league and things like that. And we've had success, but it don't hold the same weight like that anymore. You got to adjust and adapt with the times, and I think we will. But it's the same thing for Indiana. It's the same thing for Michigan, right? So I'm hoping, Woodson makes it work because I do want him to succeed. I just look at these past few rosters. The roster construction has been poor, bro. Like
Yeah.
last year was really good because you had an All American and you had a stud freshman in Jalen Hood Shafino, but you don't have that this year, right? You have a good big man, but he's not Trace. Trace was amazing last year, right? So we'll see how it goes, but you know, I'm wishing them the best.
Yep. We'll see what happens with Morty, but definitely make a break for next season. And
For
we'll
sure.
see. Like I say, I'm rooting him. Like I love Woody and all that. Coach my Knicks, had some good years with us, but you know, potential tough times for him and all that. But let's talk about number one seeds and who can pass. It seems like for the most part, look, Purdue's probably has one locked up, right? So Purdue's got it locked up. Houston has one locked up.
UConn.
UConn has it locked up. So it's right now. I would say it's between UNC and Tennessee for that last number one seed. So and then I mean you still got Creighton if they can win the Big East, maybe potentially what happens with the Tennessee loses early and all that, or Carolina potentially Creighton can get zone them. Not likely. They're probably on the 2-3 line right now. I'm probably on the 2 line right now, um, unless they lose to USC again. But Tennessee, Carolina, who gets that last number 4 seed? If you're the committee, who gets that last number 4 seed?
I'm
Last
gonna
number
say
one seed.
I'm gonna say Tennessee. Carolina, as you mentioned, is gonna have a great shot, and I think I'm saying this based off. I've heard multiple UNC players, Tyler Hansborough, John Henson, amongst others, say they didn't really care about the ACC conference tournament back when they were playing. Like it was just like, yeah, of course we want to win every game that we step on the floor for, but it wasn't the main goal. The main goal is to hoist that national championship trophy, right, on the first day of April in the Final Four. And so I think somebody might get them out the paint. I think Duke might get them. Obviously, if Duke can't beat them a third time out of 3 chances, then it's just not written in the stars for you guys. But I think you guys would get them. Honestly, I truly think that in the third time the charm. So to me, I think Tennessee is going to win the SEC tournament. I think it's going to be tough, right? But you're coming off that loss versus Kentucky on your home floor for senior night. That's all the motivation you need right there, right? They split. They beat Kentucky at Rupp, and then Kentucky beat them at Thompson Boling Arena. So on a neutral floor, I think that game is going to go down to the wire. And I think that's probably what's going to end up being the SC Conference Tournament Championship game if that's how the bracket plays out. I haven't seen it yet, so I could be wrong. But regardless, I think Tennessee's going to win now. I think that's going to be the biggest thing and the biggest boost for their case. And they've had some really good wins. I know Carolina smacked Tennessee early in the season when Tennessee went to Chapel Hill. But to me, when I look at this Tennessee team, as much as I don't like Rick Barnes, as much as I don't like the play style, I got to give them their credit. They've been one of the more consistent teams in the country. Obviously, that's led by Dalton Connect, but you guys are Kai Ziegler. You have Jamon Meshack, Josiah Jordan James, Jonas Adu. They have a lot of quality players. And so to me, I think that level of consistency is going to help them out. And Carolina's been super consistent too. So I don't want to make it seem like they haven't been, because Carolina, they've been very consistent. But if we're just being honest, the SEC is a much better conference this year than the ACC was. And so I'm going to give the Vols that nod as the fourth and last number 1 seed.
Yeah. I think I tend to agree. Even though like USC had been playing really good basketball of late, and like I said, they beat Duke twice, and that means something. But everything else is, I mean, the ACC is bad. I mean, Miami, they just lost their season. Their season just tumbled. It's that's gonna be, we gotta look at science with that, because that Miami, I mean, they just fell off a cliff and all that. So, UNC had some they lost to UConn, they lost to Kentucky at the beginning of the season and all that, but they've kind of been consistent all year. They had a nasty loss versus Georgia Tech, but every team has a loss. I mean, Duke lost at Georgia Tech too, so like but to beat Duke twice, but like I said, in a year where the ACC might get what, Duke, Carolina,
say about 4 bids maybe. I think Wake will squeeze in.
Virginia, Wake,
yep. Or no, I think Clemson squeezes in. Actually, I'll probably bump Wake. I think Clemson gets in.
Bump Wake,
yeah.
So 4 in a year. In most years where they're getting what, 7, 8,
a lot. But see, that's what I want to say real quick. That goes back to Louisville falling off, right? Because when Louisville fell off, the ACC kind of did the same thing with it, right? Because obviously it's a major player, but you had the gap years, right, where Florida State was really good. They've fallen off.
Florida State fell off too, man.
You had, like you just said, Miami. Miami was in the Elite Eight 2 years ago. They were in the Final Four last year. Now they're not even in the tournament conversation this year. So you don't have that third team, which is supposed to be Louisville, because Louisville is like the closest of those programs to being a blue blood. You have Virginia there, but we all know Virginia is not consistent enough, right? So with Louisville falling off, is really dragged down the rest of the ACC, and that's just the facts of the matter. So again, going back, like they got to get the right coach, because if you do, I think the ACC looks a lot better from a tournament resume perspective.
Yeah, I mean, you think about Louisville being down, Miami down after just getting to the Final Four. Florida State's been down. Syracuse up and down, Virginia nasty basketball. Like, it's
nasty.
They're lucky that Duke and Carolina are Duke and Carolina, because this would be really bad for the ACC. And they're another. And listen, Kev, we just talk about the Pac-12. We might be talking about rest in peace to the ACC, with, to keep it up, because especially with football being king, we know Carolina and all the Clemson and all these schools want out. Florida State, they want out. So the ACC, it might be even more down bad. But I think, aren't they getting Stanford
and Cal?
That's gonna be hella weird,
crazy. And I do want to say real quick too, shout out to Damon Stoudemire and Michael Shrewsbury. I do think Georgia Tech and Notre Dame are on the rise with those two dudes at the helm. They're only in year 1 this year, and I firmly believe, I love Shrewsbury especially, and Damon Stoudemire is an NBA guy who I think is going to prove the NBA naysayers wrong when it comes to the college game. But both those two guys, I promise you, they're gonna resurrect both those programs. I have no doubt about it in my mind.
And with Notre Dame, like their offense, they were down, but like when you watch them play, like the games against Duke, like they brought it on defense. So, and they were in some games that just, experience and all that. But Notre Dame should be on. And then with Damon just feels like Georgia Tech. Like he just fits with the culture and all that. And they beat Duke, they beat Carolina. They had some good wins this year. So
beat Clemson.
That's beat Clemson too. Those are 3 potential tourney teams right there. So that's a program too where they feel like they got the right guy right now, and I think kids will see that, and Georgia Tech could be on the come up like they were like in the 90s and all that, where they were getting stud point guards. It's like crazy. Like the fact that
Yeah,
they came to Coney Island and got Marbury still, I
crazy.
gotta look more into that. I gotta find out how that happened because that doesn't happen. Like usually
Yeah,
kid like that, especially in the 90s, he might stay local and all that, but they got him to go to Georgia Tech, but because that's the vibe. If Georgia Tech is popping like that, it's got energy, but
hmm
but yeah, those two programs, but the HCC as a whole, man, it was yeah.
Hey, and
That's
we
what
gonna
gets
we
to me.
gonna see what happens with Syracuse too. Coach Autry, we got to see. We don't know how it's
Syracuse,
gonna play
yeah.
out, but Syracuse is another major player too that kind of fell off because Boeheim was just kind of stubborn in his later years.
So yeah, the ACC got some fixing up to do because I don't know, good to have Duke and Carolina, but you need the other schools to, that's what made that conference not too long ago. Man, we got Florida
Mhm.
State was dog fights with Duke and all that. Syracuse, Notre Dame was good. Like it felt like top to bottom, like even the bottom tier teams you could lose to them. But we got to get back to that basically before it gets closed down like the Pac-12 did and all that. But what else is on your mind, man? We got conference tournament play going on. We got some
Mhm.
teams that clinched automatic bids. Like I said, we talked about McNeese State won Southern Conference. Like I said, Wagner College automatic
Yep.
bid down Staten Island. They're going dancing and all that. So we got some teams already clinched, getting ready for the tournament and all that. Are you looking for teams that are on the bubble? Seeing what they can do and all that. I want one more thing. Let's just talk about conference tournament. We kind of talked
Mhm.
about it a little bit before, like how the meaning of it, and especially not so much for like the bigger conferences, but more of like for the smaller conferences. Because like imagine this: you dominate, you do 14-2, whatever, and you just have an off night, and a team that's 13-18, they get hot, they take that bid, and then your season. That's my thing with the comp. It's like it sometimes can make, especially for the smaller schools, smaller conferences, it can make the season mean nothing. And
Yep.
that's my thing that kind of I've never liked, that those schools you can have the greatest 2 loss, 3 loss season, but because you're small, you're not gonna have the wins, the good win, the quad one win, all those, and you just have a bad day, you lose in the semis, and the team that goes, because we've seen it before. We've seen it before, and it's like, that sucks. That sucks. That like you just did all this, and like, man, but we did all the good work in the regular season. We won our regular season. We went through the gauntlet, but because there's a tournament after that, we get penalized because we just had one of the nights. We just didn't the ball didn't go in. So what's your feeling towards that? Because I don't know. This sometimes everyone gets excited about conference tournament play because it means the next step is obviously the big dance, but that's
Mhm.
the part that I feel that sucks with especially with the bottom, the lower division ones, tournaments and all that. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Man, the perfect example this year is Indiana State,
Yeah,
right?
they might imagine they
They
might. I
might
mean,
not
we've been
make
talking
it.
about it all year now. They might not get in.
Robbie Avila, Isaiah Swope, that entire Sycamore squad to me, man, deserves to be in the tournament. I know they didn't win Arch Madness, which if you don't watch Arch Madness, I feel bad for you because year in and year out, that's one of the best conference tournaments in the country. And shout out to Drake, shout out to Drake for winning it. Shout out to
Close
Coach
game too,
McGrady.
man. It was a close game.
It was a great game. Drake was up majority of the game. Indiana State came swinging back in the second half, made it close, and then Drake just pulled it out. But to me, I hate that I'm saying this, but I'm about to say this. I will happily sacrifice Michigan State's consecutive tournament appearance record for Indiana State to make the tournament because they are a much we beat them in the Breslin Center earlier this year, so that's a great win for us, right? But at the same time, they play a better brand of basketball than we do, and I don't think it's necessarily going to come down to that. Like I kind of think for some reason, I'll be honest, I don't really think my team is like a guaranteed tournament team, but everybody else says that we are for some reason. I don't really see it, but they say a lot or some people think we have to win tomorrow, which I think we will to stamp it. But at the same time, Indiana State's a good team, and I hate that just because they lost one game after having a great season where their coach is going to get promoted to even greater job. You have one of the best guards in the country, in Isaiah Swope. Robbie Avila is like the Twitter honey that Grant Nelson was last year. Everybody loves him, right? He's a big time player too, and they're probably not going to make the NCAA tournament because of one loss. And so I hope the committee does right by them and puts them in anyway, because I don't want to. Every year is always some mediocre high major teams that get in just because they had the opportunity and the privilege of being in a high major conference. And my team kind of falls into that this year. And I know some Michigan State fans not going to want to hear that, but I'm putting my fandom aside and being a college basketball fan, right? And that's what it comes down to. Like, yeah, should we be in the tournament? Yes. But at the same time, do I think we deserve to be in the tournament? No. Like, I'm just keeping it a buck. And so to me, I think the Indiana State team has been amazing, right? And so I hate that it's like that. I just think at the end of the day, put the best 68 teams in the field, regardless of conference. Use your eyes. I know it's tough to do that sometimes. Yes, let the metrics back it up in certain instances, but don't overthink it. Like, Indiana State is a tournament team that could go on a run to the Final Four. I could easily see them getting to a Final Four. Do not let one game, their most important game of the season at that, I know that's, give or take. Don't let that dictate what they did from December up until, or November up until this point, right? So to me, I'm with you. I honestly hate it just because it feels like they don't respect the mid majors or the low majors for that matter. And it's just like, it's a slap in the face to them, in my opinion. And again, like, especially when you look across the country, like, I'm not even just going to out my Spartan. Like, it's a few other teams in these high major conferences that just, they didn't do anything. Like, they never really were consistent. They didn't stack quality wins when they have more opportunities than anybody to stack quality wins. So I don't know, man. It's just, I hate that they get treated like that. Because again, if you watch Indiana State this year, you know good and damn well that team is way better than just an NCAA tournament, team in the first round.
Well, right now, Joe Lunardi has them in. So Joe Lunardi has so his last 4 buys are Michigan State, Seton Hall, TCU, Mississippi State. Last 4 in Colorado, UVA, St. John's, Indiana State. St. John's getting in. I mean, they had a late surge and all that. So
they did. Shout out to
Patino.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, see,
I gotta give him credit.
Gotta give him credit for that. First 4 out, Texas A&M, which, I mean, crazy disappointment this year. New Mexico, Wake Forest, Nova, and the next 4 out, Pitt, Iowa, Providence, and Memphis, which is crazy because Memphis, we thought we would be a lock, and another coach who might be, Penny, another alumnus, and all that. But Lunardi has Indiana State in and all that. So, like I say, your Sparty played them, and they played you guys tough, but they took the L on there. So, but it's crazy how that Drake loss. And it was a close loss, but it is a loss. They didn't win it, so it's still an L. How the committee's gonna look at that, because that's because they had 2 losses to Drake. All right, they lost to Drake twice. They're one essentially. They're 2 big. They're 2 big games versus big competition. Michigan State, Bama. They lost. So you have to see if the committee is going to use that against them. But Lunardi has them in. Lunardi's pretty accurate and all that. But that's just if everything goes the way we think it goes. But we know that's not how it goes.
Yeah.
Because we'll see. Let me put it back.
You got to watch
for out Memphis. What if Memphis wins their tournament?
Exactly.
So boom, that's 1 spot. So who else have they had? Wake Forest. What if Nova gets hot and wins it? What if Texas A&M? I know people who are betting Texas A&M to win the SEC tournament because they think they're gonna get hot. But it's like, what if those things, if the first 4 out and they will, one of those teams win their conference, then it's like, oh well, Indiana State. So Indiana State is definitely on pins and needles right now. They're hoping that it stays status quo and it stays like that, and then all right. But we know things get crazy and all that. So, but it does suck. It does suck because there's a chance that they can miss out because they didn't win the conference championship when they won the regular season. So that's the one thing I don't like, because it's unfair to kind of the mid majors and the lower tier conferences that are like, hey, I mean, cool. You went undefeated regular season, but you lost, but automatic bids, and now you're asked out. It seems unfair, but I don't know how you tweak it. You know, but we know why they do conference tournaments because there's money. So that's not going anywhere. But to end the show off, we're gonna talk about Sparty. We're gonna talk about the Blue Devils. Let me go first.
Yep.
Obviously, Blue Devils lost to the Tar Heels, which sucks, but Carolina was able to just dominate the post and what I've been talking about all season. Teams that are just bigger, Duke's just could have no chance. And I over here, we thought that I'm over here thinking big man was gonna almost died getting trampled. And meanwhile, he was all right. He's out here tripping people, which is like, yo, come on, guys, we can't be tripping. It's like every 4 years we're tripping somebody. It's like it's just like that because this is like we got Grayson Allen. It's like, come on now, we can't be doing
And
that.
real quick though, if you're gonna trip anybody, don't trip one of their best players. Like you tripped
RJ David, right?
No, he tripped Harrison Ingram. And
then Harrison Ingram. Yeah, it was Harrison.
And then he turned
right.
into a different beast and killed from the rest of that point on. Like,
and he just whooped our ass.
You got to be smarter than that, Flip.
Yeah, Flip. Flip had a tough week. Flip had a tough week. You would have thought he lost his leg. He amputated his leg. And I defended, bro. And I'm still against court storming, so it doesn't change my mind on that.
Oh man,
you can't be a softie, and then and then how the fans reacted. That was an L. That's a major. It just makes the program, but it's like that's not what it's about. That's I will never defend that as a fan of Duke. That's sore loser. That's sore loser shit. You don't do that. You don't act like sore loser. It's Kim Carver's Carolina's arch rival. You gotta be better than that. Be better. You're way better than the fan base because if we had one, you gotta handle the L's better and all that. But just it's just the childish stuff and all that, like complaining and all that game. That was a bad. But losing it to Carolina twice sucks. But we'll see how they do. I think it's still. I wouldn't be shocked if we're bounced early. I still don't. I know Jared's been really good. Roach has been good. Flip's gonna still be Flip. Even, but it's everybody else. It's just there. It's just a 3-man show. Proctor is. You don't know what Proctor you get on a nightly basis and all that. And still got obviously it's a very young team and all that, but any type of physicality, any team with size is gonna be tough for Duke. So I won't get too much into it because your team, my team's gonna be in the tournament. Your team is still, you guys are probably in it. I would say right now, and like Joe Lenardi doesn't have you for all that. You guys you should be good unless you guys bounce in the first round of the Big Ten tournament. But how are you feeling about Michigan State? Do they need to make a little run? Do they got to get to at least semifinals, the finals, or are we like, all right, we're in good shape. We'll be like a 10, 11 seed. We'll get in. We're going to be in. We made a late push this season to solidify a tournament spot.
I'm not content just because the saving grace about all this, the fact that we've been down to from our standards the past few years, is that we've played our best basketball in the NCAA tournament. Like that's the reason why I feel like you can say whatever you want to say about Izzo, but again, you go back and look at the past few years, like, we got booted by Jaime and UCLA, but that was really because we gave up an offensive rebound off a free throw, which is like a forbidden sin, right? Last year, we beat Marquette, right? We all know they were rolling. We were right there. Could have beat Kansas State in overtime. We were right there. If a game goes overtime, it means both teams had an opportunity to win the game in regulation. And then a couple years ago, when we played your Duke Blue Devils with Paulo, we were right there, right? We were up 3 with like 2 minutes left. And
That was a
so
game.
it was a great game, right? And so y'all went to the Final Four that year. So to me, that I think that's been the saving grace. I say that to say that we have to win tomorrow. And Cam Christie's been balling, but Minnesota's kind of been trending in the wrong direction like we have. Again, we're coming off a terrible loss at Indiana, where I think we start off the game, the score was like 20-5. Indiana was up. We get back into it early in the second half, and then it's a battle from there on out between Khalil Ware and Tyson Walker, just going one-on-one on each end of the floor. And of course, Indiana comes away with the victory. So we got to make some noise. Like, if we beat Minnesota tomorrow, we're going to play Purdue. And obviously, that's not the greatest matchup, but at the same time, if you want to prove yourself, what better opportunity to do that than play one of the best teams in the country, right? And we
Played them
played them.
tough too. Played them tough
That's
too.
exactly what I'm about to say. We played them tough at Mackey Arena on their home floor too. So why not get another stab at them and test yourself? And so I think we got to use these next couple games, if we get a couple games before the NCAA tournament, to just figure out any of the niches that have gone wrong, right? We got to rebound better. That's the main thing. That shouldn't have to be said, but that's been an issue all season long. If we rebound a little bit better, we probably have 4 more wins at the minimum, right? So you got to rebound better. I think we got to do a much better job of getting Jaden Akins implemented. And when I say that, we got to actually run plays for him. I think that's been one of my biggest problems, that we kind of just want him and just let him shoot threes and just chuck up threes, but we never run him off pin downs. We never run him off elevator screens. We never get him in action to where he can go get to the rim and see the ball go through the hoop early in the game, right? And I'm not too worried about us, honestly, because I do feel like even though we've lost some of these tough games versus Ohio State, versus Iowa, versus Indiana, at Indiana, we've played pretty good in the second half. So it's really, to me, it's all about maintaining in the first half, because in the second half, I know we're going to be there. I know if Tyson Walker gets into the NCAA tournament, he could have a run just as good as any guard in the country. We've seen it, right? He's one of the best guards in America. So I think that's the biggest thing. It's all about who else is going to ride with them. I know Malik Hall is, but after that, I can't guarantee anybody else, right? So to me, I think it starts off with your 2 fifth-year seniors and Tyson Walker, Malik Hall, but you also got to realize AJ Hogarth's a senior too. It's time for him to step up, right? He only has a couple of games left, if that. So I'm not too worried about us. I'm very confident that we'll get our name selected on Selection Sunday. It might get a little shaky, but I mean, this is the position that we put ourselves in. If we just handle business and beat Ohio State, we're not in this predicament. That was kind of like the dagger because they've been so bad this year, right? I'm not really mad at losing to Iowa because Iowa was fighting for their tournament lives, right? And they're probably still not going to make it, but I respect them for still trying to. Indiana's a bad loss too, but it was on the road. It was their senior night, right? You lost by 1. Like, I'm not going to kill them for that. And their biggest strength is their front court. Our biggest weakness is our front court. So the matchup, played into their favor. So again, you just beat Ohio State. We're probably not even in this predicament, but I'm not too worried. Again, I'm very curious how they come out in this Minnesota game is going to tell me everything I need to know. Like, if they start off slow, I'm going to be like, it is what it is. But if they actually come out and look like a team that's engaged, then I'll be like, oh, yeah, we could do something in the tournament, which I still think we can. It's just about putting the pieces together. But I'm not too worried.
Just about getting in, man, at this point. At this point, you don't even care. I think, we just got – and this is why, hey, a name on the front of the jersey, that's going to help you guys because it's going to be like there's going to be people in the committee. It's just natural. Like, hey, man, can we really not have Michigan State? I mean, they have a good enough resume. Like, yeah, if they were different school, mate, but,
And I want to say that too real quick, though. With the metrics thing, the only reason people are confident in us getting in is because Izzo's schedule is tough non-conference schedules every year, right? So it works in our benefit. Even remember the first game of the season, we lost to James Madison. Everybody was laughing at us.
Yeah.
They're in the tournament. They won their conference tournament. So I'm like,
that actually looks like low key. It's like
Cinderella. Like they could win a couple.
They had a hell of a season. Yeah, they had a great season.
So I'm like, bro, we're not as bad as people think we are, but we're not as good as people thought we were either. So it's just about.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was national champion. Like, I thought it get to the national championship. That was aspirations, but obviously it didn't go the way you wanted to this season. But you still have an opportunity to get into the tournament, and then we
figure it out.
We've seen crazier things happen in the tournament, and you just figure it out. You just got to get in because guess what? Everybody's 0-0 once you get in the tournament. Don't matter. As we've seen last year and as we've seen years past, we've seen Purdue be a number one seed and lose to, Fairleigh Dickinson. So is you are 0-0 in the tournament. It don't matter what your record was in SEC, ACC, Pac-12, NEC, Southern Conference, 0-0, and because we know how matchups are, we know that, and that's what I'm excited for is to get into once we figure out who's in and to get into these matchups because it's an inexact science. You may think that all right, UNC they got suckers, they got Baycott, they got RJ Davis, they got all this, who's homie that made all what's his name?
Cormac Ryan, yep.
Cormac, he killed us in the first.
He killed us last year at Notre Dame.
Killed.
He had like 23.
Yeah, like 9 points in like the first. I'm like, oh, it's over. It was like 15-2. I was like, oh man. And then he got hot right when we were about to make a run.
Got hot.
Daggers. I was like, oh man, that's a type of player that will kill you in the tournament. But like, they could get bounced in the first. Like now we know, like, hey man, this is not as automatic. You don't just put 6. All right, that's a dub. Hey man, that's no longer. You got to think about it for a second, and that's what I love. That's why I can't wait till we figure out what's gonna have Selection Sunday. That we'll do a bracket and all that on the pod and all that. Appreciate everyone. We got over 100 people watching. So appreciate everyone that was tuned in and all that to the show and all that. But yeah, Sparty Duke. Most likely they will get in. Sparty maybe got to win at least the game. Got to be Minnesota at least to feel confident. But which we'll see what happens with that. I think Duke will get in. Where their seeding will, obviously they'll probably be like a 3-4 line and all that. So we'll see what happens with that. But a lot of good basketball. Just a lot of good games going on now. Obviously, we'll get bit with the big boy tournaments. We'll get started, and all that. So, but yeah, that's another good get a bucket in the books, Kevo.
Yes, sir. And I just want to say this real quickly before we get out of here, because I feel like I've been needing to say this all season long. I think I have a little bit, but shout out to Kelvin Sampson and the Houston Cougars because going into this season, a lot of people did not think they'll be able to translate their success coming from the American, and they clean swept the Big 12 this year. They won it solo. Shout out to Jamal Shedd, Player of the Year. Shout out to Kelvin Sampson, Coach of the Year, and shout out to the Cougs, man.
He's just missing one thing. He's just missing one thing. He just got to finish it.
And that's what I'm saying. Right now, on wax, Houston is my pick to win the NCAA tournament this year.
Yeah, man. Indiana ain't been the same since they let go of that, man. I think he was like 26-6. And I forgot what happened exactly. I don't remember what happened.
Phone calls.
Right? Phone calls, BS and all that. But they ain't been the same since they fired. That's karma, but yeah, Cougs have been, and we had talked about that, like the transition and all that, and I remember just saying maybe the Big 12 got to figure out Houston
exactly
more than the other way because their brand of basketball that's not unlike it's different from the other Big 12 teams, and we saw they ran through it. Now we got to see if it translates to the tournament and they cut down the nets. This year. So it's going to be fun. I'm excited to see these games this weekend. Selection Sunday is going to be intense. I know maybe for you might be, especially if you got to take care of business versus those Gophers, you might be Kev might be sweating and all that, but it's going to be a fun. We'll see. Maybe if we'll go live, whatever, after Selection Sunday, but we'll definitely be breaking down these games once we get the brackets and all that and dive into that. But appreciate everyone who tuned in. Like I said, we had a nice amount of people in this, or we appreciate everyone who supported the pod and all that. So make sure to subscribe on YouTube, the Off the Ball Network YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you listen to your podcast and all that. But, we got a lot of great games coming up. Make sure you get ready for this weekend in college basketball, Selection Sunday and all that. Make sure to follow Kev, follow me on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, and Get a Bucket podcast. We out.